Sangshin de Jambod, Sanje Shindo Medib, Drogan Nandash, Shiva, Sho, Yedang, Ranamendra Lakan, Daya, me, Truduge.
Are there questions? I didn't get any written questions here, but if people have questions, yeah.
You're speaking about this morning.
Oh.
More subtle time regulations not considered real just in that context.
Yeah. Okay, so we were talking about Jampa and I earlier this morning. The part that in the English it's on like 117, where this subtle form of interdependence or dependent origination is not itself the way to perceive emptiness. And so we were wondering why that is, because often dependent origination is cited as being the king of reasonings to establish emptiness. So yeah, and it did say that subtle kind. So shung korang na ngama ko di di tender tramo di tona yang di tongni togi mares.
Tender tramo dona.
Re di ngama tender tramo ni tongni tope tap mayin.
Mares 어디?
Re 가르치는 디 탐마레 남긴 간소디 텐들디 릭베 갸우보다보레 디 통니 룩베체도 아니 가르치는 디기 값수 텐들 참모 디 통니 토야기 탑마레 세기도
Tender tramo 도와대 또 잡아. 돈이 로이도 조고 와래.
No, 문도 조그레스.
돈이 로 tender tramo 또 잡아. 돈이 로이도 조고 그래.
No.
민게 딱 점도 여봐. 봐. 민게 딱 점도 여봐도 로이도 조지 가나 민게 딱 점데. 딱 점도 추바지 딱 많이 뭐 추바지 키고 그래.
No.
是吧？인상 코 돈이 또왜 타위나 돈이 마도 가서 돈이 마도 또 타위인 거로 와. 돈이 마도 또 타 말이 가서 땡들로 들어 돈이 로이도 저거 아래 때려 참어.
No.
제 가서 들어서 와. 가래.
예주경아. 속장 예주경아. 텐저 참문이 통리 도배.
텐저 참문 내려와 돼. 텐저 참문은 돈이 도배 참 많이 장세대. 텐저 참문도 그 민기 딱점도 여봐 또 그래.
No.
민기 딱점도 여봐도 민기 딱점 많이 바뀌고 그래. 와. 일단디 텐저 참문도 성나 아니 도마로 유도 차그.
No.
야, 직조도 직소마.
So here, this realization of the subtle interdependence of things, when one realizes that phenomena are merely designated, that realization of subtle impermanence, like what arises for you then is that phenomena are only merely dependently designated. But it is by recognizing that they exist in that way that then one is able to refute or negate their having some kind of intrinsic existence. So it is something that has to precede a realization of emptiness, but it isn't the actual method for realizing emptiness itself. One needs to sort of proceed by way of this kind of reasoning or logic, but it is the recognizing of subtle interdependence that allows one to establish the way that phenomena actually do exist as conventionalities, as merely designated, and then proceed to realizing emptiness. But it's not itself the method for realizing emptiness. Did I get it at all? Did you?
하고서 저 데려다 민기 딱점도 때리 참못해서나 뜨름도 여봐 민기 딱점도 여봐 그봐 민기 딱점도 여봐 또 왔나 아니 미게 따서 많이 봐요. 그래.
기고를. 아니,
따서 많이 봐요. 그래.
이네 디
미게 따서 많이 봐요. 그때 가나 내로 또 그래. 좋아.
텔라.
미게 따서 많이 봐도 돼. 내로 또 그래.
No.
좋아. 따서 많이 봐. 그때 좀 나를 그래. 그때 좀 봐.
제.
미게 따서 많이 봐도 러시아랑 말해 봐. 저 봐. 따서 많이 봐. 저 봐도 가상 가자 봐.
제. 이네 각자 각나 아니 통니 토기래로.
근데 민게 따sam도 여바데 또도 여바도 또도 가 민게 따삼 많이 봐 여바데 키바래 민게 따삼 많이 봐 여바데 가차래
No.
좋아 아니 돈이 또 그래 이제 돈이 또 베타 말이스
I'm really having trouble understanding this one because it's kind of sounding like a method to me. But so when one realizes subtle interdependence, one realizes that phenomena are merely designated, that they exist conventionally as mere designations, and in order to recognize that, one needs to have negated they're having some kind of autonomous, independent existence that doesn't rely upon anything else. And so realizing the lack of that, the negating of that, is what allows one to realize emptiness, that phenomena are empty of that kind of non-contingent, autonomous sort of existence. But one has to get to the point of recognizing that lack of intrinsic existence and
Oh, yeah.
on the basis of recognizing subtle interdependence, one establishes the way that conventionalities do exist as mere designations. But it's then by negating the kind of existence that is opposed to that as having some kind of non-contingent, non-dependent existence. And it's that lack of that type of existence that is the realization of emptiness. So, and then he followed that with, so this is not a method for realizing emptiness, which, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Two questions.
Yeah.
You asked that is not a method. You're like, what is it?
아니, 텐들 참모 토야디 통니 토야기 탑 마이에나 니탑 가르레스.
탑 가르레스. 가르 타버려요, 저게.
통니 토야기 텐들
왜나
참모
돈이 또
토야기.
타 이런 거고 말이야. 내 산재주 고맙다고 타버려.
So it is a method for getting to the state of Buddhahood. So
네 고발해서 내 참모도 가르래서나 민기 딱잠도 매봐요. 딱잠도 여봐.
따로 여봐. 줍기래.
민기 딱밤도 주고 여봐대. 봐. 딱밤도 여봐대 또 어디가나 딱잠 많이 딱밤 많이 봐 여봐대 키고로 와.
No.
딱밤 많이 봐 여봐대 가자로 와.
No.
되게 비탄바 돈이 또 거로 와. 어디다 대상 돈다.
So, realizing subtle interdependence could be said to be a method for achieving the state of Buddhahood, because by realizing subtle interdependence, that things are merely designated upon their bases of designation, that conventionally speaking, they only exist as these mere designations, it's by realizing subtle dependent origination that one establishes that mode of existence, and in doing so negates their existing in a way that is not merely designated, as if they had some sort of intrinsic or inherent existence. So by negating that kind of existence, realizing that lack of non-designated type of existence, one realizes emptiness.
Oh.
Just on the object of negation, you might see subtle origination. You see how they exist.
Yeah, and so the opposite of that is the object of negation. I thought I said that, but maybe I didn't. Yeah, but in order to establish that they exist merely designatedly, you have to also negate the opposite type of existence, which would be a non-designated. So, but I guess the way that it's working is that you first establish that they exist only as mere designations and then refute that kind of existence that is non-designated sort of existence, which is the object of negation, which then once you have refuted or negated that, you realize emptiness.
Oh yeah. 시리 군조지 담바 또와라 우미다와 또바 온도 조고에도 수도와 그와 시리 군조지 담바 또와라 우미다와 또바 온도 조고에서 군조지 담바세데 군조 담바 잠마이 바라와 군조지 여바 또와 군조 참모도 또라스 거래 군조지 여주데 가래라잖아 미게 타냐 또바 따바 잠지 여바데.
No. So this understanding of conventional existence, not just understanding conventional truths, but understanding their mode of existence, is a precursor or a preliminary to understanding the view of the middle way. So having a proper understanding of the conventional existence of things, one is then able to proceed to the view of the middle way. What? Okay, the Yangyar Sunrochi, Sikje di Yangyar Sunrochi. Tanda Rangsuya di Sikje di Kunzobi Yutang di Kunzo de Yuba Mula Togorabes, Jela.
우미다고 시 군조지 담바 또와라 우미다와 군조 또바 온도 조고데스 군조지 담바 또와라 시시간다 간이
So the understanding of conventionalities is the foundation, right? There's that maybe here. The young
시리 군조지 담바 또와라 우미다와 또바 온도 조고데스.
Okay, so so in order to realize the foundation, the conventional existence of things, one has to gain the middle view first. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the parang chilaw kare.
Did Jison.
Kibare.
Okay. Yeah.
We know by listening to teachings and analyzing that it's completely untenable. It's just impossible for something to exist the way that it appears independently, on its own. That's just an impossibility. But yet Rinpoche said that emptiness is dependent upon the valid cognition that establishes it. So my question is since it's impossible to exist any other way besides being empty, how is whether it's designated as empty or not designated as empty? I mean, it seems like it would still be emptiness. So I don't see how emptiness is dependent on valid cognition.
Yeah, I may have been remiss in that. Okay. I don't know how to even ask that. Tony di chudamjegi nelu rewa. Ine Tony jokpe chedu di jokchegi tsemaji yogore rewa.
Tony is na cherang Tony dobi tsamade chedi Tony jokchegi tsama joji rewa. Tsamadi Tony dola tena Tony shotu go rewa. Ida Nelu tobi tsamade nelu jojere nelu joje guju tata jindi sigimbe namba shacho guju resete imbe
no re
ode tagareda joje guju de kare jinde chanyi ba mai ba che toni yebade toni tobi tsama yezang toni shato barwa 다음에 버터비 참아면은 다음에 저투고 말아와 다음에 여봐대 미다버터비 참아 예배 미다버 저투 말아와 그봐 참여 주바 샤시 전이 세도와 샤자 줘봐대 참여 주고 참여 주산디로와 얘다 참아대 샤자 조제 참아 미다버터비 참아대 미다버 조제 참아 미다버대 나바 샤제 되고 미다버 조제 참아대 나바 조제 그죠 다 치고 강라 양 다 뒤에 뒤에 되면 셰비 치고 강제라 샤 남바 장조 조제 당조데 남바 샤죠 그 군대에서 상만을 샤죠 그래 다 군대의 주디워디 아니 두마체를 말와 이자 디타이네 카가체 디리
So here we can only posit emptiness if we have a valid cognition to posit that in the sense of cause and effect. Although it's like emptiness is the sort of a nature or mode of everything. In order to be able to posit emptiness, it's dependent upon having a valid cognition that posits that emptiness. So for an individual phenomena to be able to posit the emptiness on the basis of that phenomena, you have to have the valid cognition recognizing empty. So you can't posit emptiness without a valid cognition like positing that emptiness. I don't know yeah, well, you can't posit. Yeah. 이네 통리디 최탐지기 랑친이라고 그랬어. 최탐지
최탐지의 돈이 요래 최탐지의 돈이 요래 최탐지의 랑신이 돈 벌어와 최탐지의 돈이를 요래
아니 디 족책이 세마
최탐지의 딩도 최레레 그 돈이 또 참아대 최태단티기 돈이 조책 참아 최디 돈이 대 아니 디조 넘버 샤제 되고
No. So as it was explaining that everything is dependently originated, and so for all compounded and uncompounded things, we can talk about this level of designation of the valid cognition, which posits that thing as being like in a cause and effect relationship with the thing posited. So although emptiness is the sort of mode of existence of all things, in order to posit the emptiness of a specific phenomena, you have to have a valid cognition positing that emptiness to establish that cause and effect relationship. So this applies to everything. So if we are going to posit or realize the emptiness of an individual phenomena, there's this valid cognition which is positing that empty. That's the only way we can posit it, is by a valid cognition.
Oh yeah.
What makes the selflessness person easier to comprehend than selflessness and must that comprehension necessarily precede the other?
아니 남기인간서디 최기 닥진 당보 계기를 최기 닥진 당보 계 아니 디젤라 강사기 닥진 이네 간서 당매 토두 당보 디 강사 당매 가레체네 라와레스 가레체네 디토야 라와레 가레체 디토야 라와레로 강사기 당매
엉내를 또 그래
디 라와레로
가래 라와레 잘 라임바 또 라와레 라
아니 가레체네
가래 라와레 강사라 다중에 랍차임 바티 와 강사스리 가라 다시 풍보를 때네 다바점 다시 풍보를 때네 다윈 아시 또 고요와 다시 풍보를 때네 다윈 아도 고이다 아예 다시 풍보를 때네 다바 인상 현了때네 다바 인상 라와도 주바데 강사가 된도 크 나와요 와래是吧？你去了我原章，当面一个多人给往对钱呢，俺那个去了我原章，看啥当面俺都要低的，是吧？
아니 인신민지 당보 강사기 다음에 더 그래.
또看一下呢，인신 매지 된 돈이多少多말이,是吧？那就我给俺那看说的，花亏人把钱一干了。코와 제지가 주대 가르래서나 안에 최시 당진 체 강사가 당진 태양 제지가 주지 체체 당진 아니 최지 단정을 되는 강사가 단정제 강사가 단정고 왕게 레사 레티 왕게 아니 코를 좀 봤삼바와 코지거와 어때선데 가나 다 동안 몇에나 단정 pon고요 예상 단정 가르 pon고래서나 단정이가 그 코위사와 쳐와 직전 이나양 내라 강사가 된도 된라 팝지 잠바 또 나와디 강사 쇼디 잠바 다시 풍부를 때는 다병아이 또这个 다시 풍부를 때는 다방이 또 거를 대를 때는 아니 라시지 주거를 크게 나와요 장 아니 강사들도 내라와 두시래
So it's said that it's easier to understand, to come to an understanding of the selflessness of the person because, one, it's easier to recognize that the self is something which is dependently designated. So on the basis of the aggregates, we designate this thing, person, but it's not something that is, it's easy to see that that is a designation on the basis of these aggregates. So we are able to more easily see that this is something which is not truly intrinsically established, but rather is a mere designation. And then following that, one is able to come to an understanding of the selflessness of phenomena. So first, though, one has to come to a recognition that these two types of grasping at a self, the grasping at a self of persons and the grasping at a self of phenomena, are both the sort of root of cycling in samsara, and that is the thing that one needs to remove in order to stop this cycling through samsara. And so although it is the case that the grasping at a self of phenomena arises first and then one has the grasping at a self of persons, it's easier for us to come to an understanding of how this the self of a person lacks this kind of intrinsic or inherent existence, because it's easier to see that that is something that is merely designated upon the basis of the aggregates, and then it is by that we're then able to come to an understanding of the selflessness of the person that then will be followed by coming to an understanding of the selflessness of phenomena.
Oh yeah.
Wait, okay.
Yeah.
Kim, okay, or Anne, yeah.
If someone can review mind, like my body, my mind, if someone is able to, actually review that, see the emptiness of mind, does that count as perceiving the selflessness of phenomena?
Okay. Namgin jiktala di nga jin dang nga yiwa jinya de ani nga yiwa di dakme thona
그래서 나도
nga yiwa di gakna
많이 와카나스나 가서 아니 양조지다 달라 그래
남게 간서 디 직다 니 요래로
직다랑 완전히 지다다 가이와 집에 직다 니 요래 네
아니 nga이와기 직다 디 각나 디 저기 다음에 독일을 베스
너도 말이지 가이와 집에 직다 가이와 집에 직다다 가 집에 직다 니가 가사가 단세래 많이 가사가 단세 일단 가사가 단지 시험이 받아라 마도 마이위 시험이 마이와 집에 지다되게 시험이 받아라나 마이위 시험이 받아라 마데 아니 최이다면 또 말이 그러와 최지다면 또야 돼 가르래서나 되나 최신 그 소년다고 최이다면 또 다시 주어 또 와대 최이다면래 최신 그 소년라시 말도 같아 대도와 그 최이 다음에 저거 말해 최지 당진 다음에 생각해 가려서 곧 또와디 가려서는 저어디 풍부 다시 풍부 라시니 마주어 또 그래 좋아 어디
So the grasping at the I and grasping at the mind are both types of the view of the perishable collection. So No.
강사단세.
No. So those are both types of grasping at the self of the person. So when you recognize that the mind doesn't exist as one is grasping it, one hasn't recognized the selflessness of phenomena, but rather the lack of existence of that type of mind. One has realized part of the selflessness of the person, but not the selflessness of phenomena. So in order to realize the selflessness of phenomena, one moves on to, say, looking at the reflection of a face in a mirror and recognizing that that reflection is not inherently existent as a face, and then moves on. And the primary sort of object that we are trying to recognize the selflessness of phenomena in relation to is the aggregates upon which we have designated the I. And so realizing the selflessness of the mind is not a realization of the selflessness of phenomena. Did that get it?
That answers my question. Still, I have trouble with that.
Okay. Di kelenya kale kapodo. No. You can't 말해 디선이셔. 거야 카포도.
그래 거야 가서자.
데 ngayiwagi zinya de
ngayiwa 생각인데 미바디 간데레잖아. 가르미게 ngayi와라 미교와래 nga라 미교와래. 가르레잖아. ngayi와 집에 지다디 미소도 미시 차네. 미소 디다네 ngayiwo 냠도 아는 가랑 산지 좋았던 거 말해. 또 여기 가서래 담봉 맛이 달라 현주지 담봉 안증이 지다지 로 단지 지다니 그 기름나 담봉 안증이 지다지 거래 담봉 맛이 달라 현주지 나랑 신주와 집에 맞지 디디니 미소디다니 마요 냠도 아니 마요랑 있어서 라시 주와 집에 맞지 가나 디 나랑 마요니까 라시 주와 생거 말해 마요가 집에 지다지 미소 라시 주와 생거 말해 와 다기 디시응을 차게 봐서 다기 디시에서 가나 마요위 천시 미소디다니 마요 냠도 아니 나랑 그 천이 주었지 봐. 대랑 아이와 준비 진짜다 생각하래.
So here with the grasping, so with the view of the disintegrating collection, these two types of grasping at the I and grasping at the mind. So among the two of these, the grasping at an I or a self, a person, precedes the grasping at things as mine. So when you, for example, have a sense of like it was like eyes and so forth, like my eyes, that grasping, it doesn't take the sort of the object, the eyes or whatever, as that which is seen as being intrinsically established or inherently existent, but rather that's mixed with a sense of this I that is established by means of its own characteristics or is intrinsically existent. And so when you have like a sense of, so again, between these two views of the perishable collection, where you have a grasping at an I and then the grasping at a mind, they're sort of mixed together. So it isn't like a phenomena other than the self is being perceived as truly inherently existent. When you grasp it like, oh, my eyes, there's a sense of the self as being, the I as being intrinsically established and mixed together with a sense of mine or possessing that particular object. So this is considered to be a part of the view of the perishable collection that is a grasping at the self of persons.
Oh yeah, that miso memba. Ji song de la, mai wa ji bi ji da lian ji ji mi ba ni, mai wa ni yin ji, mai yu chen xin miso mi ba mi song o, chen ne song a re. Mai wa ji bi ji da lian ji de ge mi ba de la, mai wa rang re. Mai wa sing de ni kare re sana, ta de la de ji de kara ka bo yo re, so wa. Mai wa sing de 아니다 최다 가사 뉴스 제비 최야 말이 가사야 말이 라 최다 가사 뉴스 제비 최이나 아니 마이와랑 그 전이 주어지 비쯤 말에 최 단전 조거에 마이와 랑서 라시지 마주바데 최 다음에 조거에 是吧？确当看啥个单位的去单位牛的东西我呢下把马多赶紧可能没些吧，看啥去玩哪些钱呢？单位的呢做完那边确当看啥也吧？你说我以为准备，我以为的确当看啥你是去确样马人，啊你看啥样马人？我以为准备记得的看啥个单子人，提我让个才你出来挣，我以为让先做来挣。 是吧？有时间，我以为让个参与毛主把这个干啥单位什么人，是吧？
So here, where you are grasping at the mind, the object of observation of that is mind. It isn't a phenomena, and it isn't the person. So it actually is neither the self of phenomena to which one is grasping, or the self of the person. It's the mind is sort of a category between those. It isn't something that is a phenomena other than the person, but it isn't the person. So this is usually, there's some debate about this, but the object of observation when one is grasping at the self of this idea of the mind, it isn't some phenomena, it is that sense of mind. And so here, where one is when one is grasping at something as being mine, there is the sense of the mine as being intrinsically or inherently established, and the sense of an I as being intrinsically or established by means of its own characteristics. But this sense of mine, it isn't actually really a phenomena, and it isn't the person itself. It's sort of in a different... Okay, Kim, I saw Kim first, sorry.
This question is about nirvana.
What?
I'm not understanding what it is, and if it's a concept that's conventionally designated, why would we even want to attain it anyway? What is it that we're attaining? How do we, what's its purpose? I don't understand its relationship to eventually coming to understand emptiness.
Wow.
Want that again?
냥엘레 네바 가르레스.
가세.
냥엘레 네바 가르레스.
냥데.
냥데디 군소도 예바.
냥데스나东尼小伙是吧？其他让些娘的了，让些娘的塞住，有的的他娘的下家嘛不要让些娘的，他家娘的让妹妹他们娘的，让些娘的是呢。东北你给让些了，前面来把嘛修个印章，让些娘的是个的，是吧？是吧？我那他嘛人把了，俺他女主帮把给。 路的来人呢，你就帮把个提醒你，娘的，是吧？你就帮把娘的，人家准备帮把提醒你，他娘的来讲的，这里有的，他这里其他人就看似的娘的是个人，你就帮吧，是吧？你就帮把给，俺过点起来娘的才错过的，
Okay, I don't know if I know how to ask your question, Kim, or I'm not even sure that I fully know what the question is. So here, when we talk about nirvana, we could actually posit that as emptiness. There is a sort of natural nirvana, the fact that things are empty, that whatever sort of adventitious defilements we have, they haven't entered into that nature of our mind. And there are many different sort of designations. There's nirvana with remainder, nirvana without remainder, and so forth. But the idea of what we mean by nirvana is the removal, the cessation of various defilements, in particular the afflictive obscurations and as well as the obscurations to omniscience. If we remove those, we achieve a state of freedom from those, a cessation of those obscurations or those stains, the removal of which leads to a state of freedom or beyond being beyond suffering. But that doesn't get at the
So is nirvana like persons or phenomenon? Is it something merely conventionally designated? A concept merely conventionally designated?
아니 냥데디 양 르팔 탁파참레베스
어디 탐절로기도 봤다 왔습니다. 이제 안돼 봤습니다.
Yes, so it's merely designated all phenomena.
실은 나고 치 가르지네. 르 타잔점도 다 요말 루디라. 패로 파다자 다들 뒤태용으로.
Other than things there's nothing that is not designated. There's nothing that is not merely posited by mind. There's nothing we can point to that has some kind of existence beyond that.
So is this sort of a phase of coming to better understand emptiness at some point by getting rid of some of the ideas that we have about perception?
What?
Why would we even want to attain that state? It's something that's just conventionality. It's not really real. It's something projected by my mind.
Okay, 냥데디 덴바 마드룹나 아니 카레체네 톱도 요레스 르팔 탁파참 예나 카레체네 냥데디 톱도 요레스 이 덴바 마레스
양대 전에 요아래. 또바따서 미나요 요아래 양대. 양대 토바 요아래. 균지리 세바 요아래. 연예지리 야 토바 요아래. 또바따서 이나 아니 가세 균지리 세바 매바다 연대리 토에메 바지 말해.是吧？他地zum到我们面前看的地热嘛就把一张。
So, just because nirvana is not like truly established, just because it's something that is merely designated by our mind, doesn't mean it's not real or that it doesn't exist. There is the extinction of various faults. There is the attainment of all of these various qualities. We can say that those things exist. The way that they exist is being merely designated, but they do exist. And so this is why you see that the lower tenant schools, those below the prasangikas, are asserting some kind of intrinsic existence because they don't know how to posit existence without it being intrinsic or inherent somehow. And so that's why the prasangikas, it's easy to fall into that thinking that there's nothing, but it's not that nirvana doesn't exist, it's just that it doesn't exist as something truly established. It's merely designated. All phenomena are merely designated, but that doesn't mean non-existent. Right? Rodney, I say,
How can memory be explained or occur if the basis of designation of thought no longer exists?
concept.
Wait, can you repeat that, Rodney? I'm sorry.
Say, how can the memory of pot occur or be explained if the basis of designation of pot no longer exists? My brother no longer exists.
Yeah.
He's dead blood. How can I have a memory of him, or how can the memory of him be explained?
디 쳔바 기콜라레스 아니 ngama 베자잖아 닥시 지기 팅두디 붐바레스 디 쳔바 기콜라 쳔바
concept.
디 ngama 닥시 메나 아니 닥페 체 칸데스 쳔 두키르베스
다시 요하라. 시단한 공고 간세지나 곧 다시 요하래. 다시랑은 좋아요 말만도. 라완도 주게 다시 요 말. 다시 요하라. 가사다고나 다시 풍부.
이네 닥시 직페 제라 추디 쳔 두키레스 페체잖아 거기 초초디
제용구나 초제단테 대위체나 잡아제라 제용구로 봐. 말하지 아니 배가서 니마레레레레레레 대대 말도 도고 와래. 아니 상하면 대화가 잡아지 대화 지내가서 제가 저와도 잡아제요 알아.
네네네. 이 템바디 칸데스 케두기레 닥시메나
다시 생각하세요. 다시면 잡아제서 가세요.
What? 디
시디면 대가 시디면 아마 대화 쳐지요 알아. 나를 안에 가려서는 계산 채워기 채워 가산 내가 강 채워데 대체비 잡아 드는 게요 알아.
No.
어디와?
아니 템바디 칸데스 케두기레스
아니 아마기 참바데 아마기 시왕 아마기 참바데 쟁게 알아. 로 시왕 아마기 아니 시와 치마기 참바데 쟁게 알아.
So it comes from like a previous moment of consciousness that like you don't have to have the basis in order to remember something. So there is like in our consciousness the memory brings forth that object. Like you don't have to have the basis in order to remember something later. So if you have like an imprint on the consciousness, that brings forth the memory of it. You don't have to actually encounter the basis.
야, 다 대샤샤샤. 다 지지. 다 다중에 담대 마시나. 파다바 참 인장 다바데라 다시 참아지고 가세데高了 본바다와 高了 본바다보 따나 대출소 냠나 세다 또바 따자미나 등당 아주 좋아를 요하나 시체니 또바 따자미나 아니 본바라 또 까와시 또바 따초고로 왔어 설라야 라체 또바 따초고로 왔으나 초냠나세 다 대충 메줘 바레스 가르레스나 메줘데 파다 참 인양 데르다발라 아니 다시 참아지고 그래 다시 참아지 다시 가장 시원하시 따와 태양세 되네 다 가르러서 배나 다시 띵도 아니 가자라시지 주와 까바나 아니 배나 다시 분비된도 라시지 주와 가사 라시지 주와 까바나 다시 분비된도 라시지 주와 까바나 다시 가사대 다시 분비된도 까바 되잖아 아니 나세 다시 분비된도 나자네 와 말이야 까바나 아니 가려서 까베 슈드로 가사시와 그 명잠시 리고래 명잠시 그러나 민담지 제수 중 제수 쪽에 민디 제수 주베 안 어디 나자 잠되기 민디게 나자 잠지 아니 편의소지 차지 팬다와다 내가 소위 아니 자기 차와 쳐봐대 직点把它插吧직点把它插吧天地能怎么提给아니 차와 대다 제 쳐봐라 타냐 비차만 내봐 매봐 전담 자위 차만 내봐 매봐 리벤 내봐 매봐 예장 아니 난怎么돼 가사도 자쳐가 우다데도 순도와 초간에는 메조데 파다점 인자 따발라 다시 참아지고 그래 따와 태양세다 따와 태양세 낭점디 다시 풍비도 가사 그바래데 나자 잠지 내와 나잠지 되라 제수마 휴배 따바에 맞아 제수 나잠디 팬이 쳐지 차와 쳐봐데 기대랑가 와라 주바几天被写完了查吧，大我点开的说几天被写完了查吧。我那怎么提的？俺呢，现在为那怎么的？他也就查我切当切吧了，俺呢他也被前面那把买吧。全场这位日本那把买吧，开始送的点把印章，但那怎么提的？看啥的交关下交通，是哦呀。
So then here, getting to how we go about this process of designating or labeling things, one might think to yourself, if every object is nothing more than what we label it, then I can just go out and call gold brass, or call a pillar a pitcher, and that's just what they will be. But again, it's not that way. We do say that things are just labeled what they are, but for the label to be applied, the basis that gets it must be a reasonable one for that particular label. So you can't just just give whatever sort of designation to things. It has to be in accordance with sort of conventional perception. So if you refute a self that is inherent, or a person that is inherently or intrinsically existent on the basis of designation of the aggregates, that doesn't negate the person existing as a mere designation, but one can't just can't just make that designation on any sort of basis. It needs to be a particular, a suitable or a valid basis for the particular label. So when we apply a label, three conditions must be present. So the first of these three is that the object must be known to a conventional perception. So it needs to be there needs to be consensus within worldly perception regarding the function of that thing, such that it makes logical sense to apply the particular label. And then one needs to have a situation where no other conventional perception can contradict its existence. So we can't have a situation where there's some other conventional perception that would contradict the label that we have tried to give something. And then there is no ultimate analysis can contradict its existence either. So in the case of designating a person on the basis of the aggregates, that mere appearance of the person is what we give that designation of person, and that's a suitable basis for taking that label. Within the world, we recognize that as being a person as such, and there's no other sort of conventional perception which can contradict that existence, the mere appearance of that person as such. And if we try to analyze it with kind of ultimate analysis, we don't find any intrinsically or inherently existent thing which would contradict its being a mere appearance. And so, therefore, all three of these must be present in order to make a reasonable kind of designation or label of an object.
Oh yeah, that did it. 숨대니 거여서 아니 다 내가 두선도와 탄예비 참아 현진에서 양아서 다 간데 토요라 미다와 토요 밀점 바당 롱거라 점바 토요라 밀점 바 아니 가사 따발 점바 아다 되게 강샤 줘라 단도 토요라 미다 롱거라 점바 저 딘조라 아니 토요그 미디양 또바 다산인 바체 롱그라디야 또바 다산인 체 또바 다산인 바 총량양 아니 롱 토르 민나위 나자 대당 롱그라 나위 나자 대기 아니 거거 나자 대기 가서래 타녀지 여바 쇼민도 바데 콘도 샤바가 아니 타녀비 샤와라 차바 마인 바당 타녀비 참아 생긴 민여바다 테나지지 그리바 민여바다 마인 바 테나 아니 또바 따자 민장 토 가서래 미송아 대기 아니 타녀비 참아 내바다 대송아 나시다니 타녀비 참아 생긴 내주양 양르부 토요다보 시라 현식이 미식 파기 미식 이세 매와티 이체장사 이래 이체장 토용우스 도비 내의 미식이 대토요인바 매와나 세dim뭐 아니 토요인바 매와나 아미 토요 미송화데 땡에도 들어와니 다시 참아마이 베다레스
So again, when we apply a particular label, these three conditions need to be present in order for it to be a valid kind of label. And so there are examples then of situations where this isn't a valid label, or where we are not putting a valid label on things, such as when we see like a stack of stones. Here it says scarecrow, but some like pile of things that looks to be a person, but when we get close, we see that that's not actually a person. Or if we try to designate, like say a rabbit has horns or something like that, there isn't a valid consensus, a valid basis upon which to posit those things. It contradicts another conventional perception, and so therefore it's not a valid kind of label to give that thing. So there are many different examples one could give, but here it says, now here is what we mean when we say that one conventional perception has been contradicted by another. We can be standing off looking at a scarecrow way off in the distance, and someone next to us says, that's a man over there, and we believe him. Then someone comes up who's seen for himself that the thing is just a scarecrow and tells us it's just a scarecrow. So our initial perception of the thing as a man vanishes, and this is an indication that the basis was not a reasonable one for that given name. So that basis of like a pile of stones or a scarecrow or whatever is not a reasonable basis to take this label of person, and when it is contradicted by another valid conventional perception, we are able to see that that is not a reasonable basis for giving that particular name.
Oh yeah, that 라여제 다장 다시 참아면 다시 나시 체네 롱고선 왜 와나 아니 롱을 라면 바 참여 주바 연장 아니 대라 참여 내봐 다시 참으면 다 뒤집어 주고 하래 되나 된다 다 조지 가서 그래 토요 뭐 준비 준바당 롱을 준비 준바라 소와 대다 아니 차지 주질래 비셔와 연장 차지 주질래비 시와이디 랑게 나잠데 아니 나잠데 대단히 차와 처음에 봐. 또 직진자 디샤 차지 주질래비 시와. 토요 미송아 대단. 아니 롱어라 준비 또반이 어디 롱어라 다와다 토요라 밀 다장 아니 다바다 다장 아니 텐데기 로이 나자 잠아 안에 가서래 처음에도 받을 가와래서나 권인이가 차지 주질래비 시와인바 주질래비 시와인바
So these examples of of thinking that like a scarecrow or a pile of rocks is a person, or in this case, if we try to say that rabbits have horns, there's no reasonable basis for those labels. So in these examples, there is a sort of superficial or a temporary cause of error in those perceptions. So because you're far away from this scarecrow, you think think that it's a man or a person, but that consciousness is affected by a cause of error, such that you aren't able to reasonably ascertain the basis and put this name on it. Or if you like see something and you think that it's a horn on a rabbit, that's a misperception. It's a consciousness which has been affected by a temporary cause of error, and so therefore they are not properly applying a valid designation here. So we must have a reasonable conventional state of mind that is applying a name to a reasonable collection of parts which acts as the basis we want to give the name. So in the case of these designations, there isn't a valid basis because the consciousness which is perceiving them is affected by a cause of error.
Oh yeah, that did soon. Tadana Tanya Lord Tama, Tanya Lord Tama, Tanya Dojik, and the Lord Tamatiki. Tadana Tanya Dojiki, Lord Tama, Tama, Dashi Yang, Dashi de Carre, and Dashi Tadan de Choba. Koyang, and the Tanya de Damba, Tama, and Tama also about Guguresa. Or Dashi Tama said, go grace, 다시 초바 참아오면서 여바시라 따고 그래. 뭐냐면 저 따고 그래. 참아서도 참 로이 참아 많이 받자. 미 참아서야 다시 참아. 세워나 시제 미 참아서 와 다시 참아 드리고 그래서 되나 유지 변보 예비 다시 배나 뒤배라 이제 되나 유지 변보야 예위 변보기 차와 천유와기 차와 천유 차와 대단 대체바 예위 안에 가서라 미 다시 참아시라 따발마도 안에 대미 미람비 냉구소라 안에 변도 메고 나시리 스타디도 순도아
So again, we have to have a reasonable basis for giving the designation, and also a valid cognition to give that designation which is not affected by some kind of cause of error. So again, therefore, we must have a reasonable, conventional state of mind that is applying a name to a reasonable collection of parts which acts as the basis we want to give the name, and which actually exists. So in the case of like saying that rabbits have horns, that's something that does not exist. So we have to have a reasonable collection of parts which exists as that proper kind of basis to be given the name. So this is the same kind of situation when we are trying to name somebody governor of a district. We have to have a person who is suitable to be given the name. So you need to have a reasonable basis for giving this label or giving this name, someone who is actually suitable to be called or to be appointed as governor. So, I'm sorry. So we don't take some kid who doesn't have a proper lineage and doesn't have proper faculties and appoint him as governor.
다 도나 대성도 대탐제 랑원에 춤나 다 랑원에 춤나 아니 다시 쳐발라 되미고 봐 다시 쳐발라 되미고 봐 라완도 춤나 아니 다시 쳐발라 되미고 하나에 되미고 봐 아니 미고 봐 라랑 거는 추추바시 거장 라 지나나 그 쳐카데지 이나양 아니 랑원에 추바 라완도 추바 다 다시 혼자 시원하지 셴라라 말려가 주바 셴라 말대바 주바 단지지구나 아니 다시 쳐발라 때미르바 라라 근원에 주바시 거장 된다 마임바 다시 쳐발라 메대바 마임 대다 메임바 다시 쳐발라 때네出国吧 다시 쳐발 라래네出国吧 인장 아니 랑은에 맞주바 셴라 라래바 셴라 되와 我天这应当按那两个人嘛出吧，让信息嘛出吧，电报嘛出吧这，但是两个人嘛出吧，让信息嘛出吧，电报嘛出吧，我 다 집어 cheche 사왕도 맞주바 맞주바래 다양한데 대진나시 중국도 배나 유지 gambola 파다네 주바라세 유지 gambo 대양 다진나시 전에 파르민게 파다네 주바라 코란궁안에 추추바 매장 아니 랑제 gambo 코란궁안에 추추바다고 지난 거랬어요 코란라 gambo 알아들라는 거를 아니 가서 gambo 코란궁랑은 로라 나주 잡아 랑제 gambo 코란궁안에 추추바다고 지나신 대다도 시험받다를 추추도 추바데 안에도 값들 가자들이
So, as these examples show, if any of these things existed from its own side, it wouldn't have to rely on the group of parts we give its names. Then each one would have to exist out there on its own. But that isn't the way that these things exist. They appear to us as if they had some sort of existence where they didn't have to rely or depend upon anything else, where they weren't contingent upon anything, even this group of parts that we are designating them on the basis of. But that is not the case. All inner and outer phenomena are merely posited by mind or imputed by thought, and they don't have some sort of existence from their own side, which has no reliance upon anything else, which is established, set up all on its own from its own side. But rather, they only exist as we dependently designate them. So, here, as it says, if these things existed from their own side, they wouldn't have to rely on the group of parts we give the name, and then each one would have to exist out there on its own. But that's not the way it is. They can only exist in dependence on the group of parts we give their name. And this is why they do not exist from their own side, and they do not exist naturally. They do not exist truly. So there are many terms here where it says like they don't exist naturally, they don't exist truly, they don't exist from their own side, they don't exist by means of their own intrinsic characteristics. All of these for the Prasangika school are synonymous, this idea of not having to rely or depend upon anything else for its existence. So again, like the examples before, we could take some local chieftain. He is chief only so far as on our part we call him chief, and not out there from his own side. To us, though, the chief appears to exist out there on his own, and we take him to be this. We take him to be this way. So things appear as if they existed just from their own side, naturally or intrinsically from their own side. But it is only based on this process of designation that we can say that they exist. So although things like this chief appears to be the chief from his own side, it's only from our designating him as such that we can say he exists as chief.
Oh yeah, 가자 인체. 대신도 나태양 마세야데. 아니 나이 다세 리섬이염. 야나 풍봉아. 대신도 나태양 리섬이지. 뭐네 추추바야 매봐야. 다시 풍봉아 영원에 추추바야 매봐라. 아니 다시 풍봉아 리섬 니 초바라. 다시 리섬이 초바텔라. 다도 그 탄에도 다단 도박이 있어와 다단 도박이 라이장 아닌 딩아시 잡았다 도배단 딩하고 냠도 아니 증바 다시 초반라 다도 그 탄에 점도 타다 점기 나주 예 점시是吧？我哪怎么去？哪怎么去？哪就也怎么去意思？大西扩张操办也没人，大西按你历史你说，历史没人的那样俺没，碰碰啊人的那样俺没，大西碰碰啊错别的那样俺没，历史错别的那样俺没。我那俺考有啊的是那，俺是俺的有啊的没人是有啊的，有就考有啊的是那，大西碰别定都，俺的民党倒白。他大把占都，安尼有话嘞，哪怎么听？我哪怎么听的？安尼他，我刚才个小娃去个嘞，是个话嘞，他民个怕他怎么就哪就也怎么是说的对吧嘞？
So this then is the object of negation. The object that we are trying to refute here is this kind of existence from its own side, as if it didn't, as if things didn't rely or depend upon other objects or the process of designation. So this is the again the object of negation that is being identified here. So this me or this I is the same way too. It is not something that exists out there on top of my body or mind. Rather, it is only something that appears to me because I have applied the name. I have taken the collection of parts and put upon them the label and concept of me, and me is only in name. So this is the same with the way that we identify a self on the basis of designation of the aggregates. We apply this name I to this basis of designation, but when we investigate, we can see that the person is not the aggregates, the collection of aggregates. It isn't identical with that basis of designation. It isn't in the individual aggregates. It's not the collection of aggregates, but rather it's something that is merely designated by this word, this a label, and the concept, the idea of I. So it exists merely nominally as something which has been designated on this basis of the collection of body and mind. And so the process of labeling is like this. The basis to be given the name exists out there. From our side comes the concept that applies the name and the name itself. We come out with something labeled, and it's nothing more than that. There's nothing from the side of the object. There's nothing inherent about the basis of designation that says this is an I, but rather this is something that we have designated with a word and a thought or a concept.
Oh yeah, that look at it, and can't castle Kasashi, Mingi Toba Tawa Tabala, Khan Daba, Kana Dobagi, and Dashi to Yoko Yenzang, and Kasore, Pangwin and Dashi to Yabacha. Daluja Pangwin and Dashi de Chupsi Gala, Kana Dobi Shitashi Kumbong or the Pad Yabacha. That's true, Chungene, Dodge Toba than Drab. 然有的当当在这是吧？他就喜欢那些。从外呢，到这个多把单，然你就，俺呢，然你就，俺呢大些错把他了，但呢，俺呢看上的，你看上我什么？俺呢多把大把这么多，俺呢能这么的看上人嘛多，大些个人看上嘛也不钱。哦，能这么的个，俺呢看上个小青年。 想说我的，多半没，看说的，你看上我，伢们就俺们把大瓦当，这一当，你看上就这个，这个是的，能怎么的？他下过小人家，从外呢，到这个多把大这年纪大怎么的人，现在一个广东下巴给，大些错把了的呢，这都给他呢都怕大怎么的，能就也怎么学，现在他这几把几家的。
So, this continues saying that again that this process of labeling, one has to have a basis of designation which is existent, but the basis and it needs to be a suitable basis of designation. But we apply this concept, the name and the concept, and we apply this to the mere appearance of something. So, the thing designated is merely an appearance. We don't have, there isn't the basis of designation of the person, for example, the aggregates. There's nothing from the side of that object, but rather we, on the basis of designation of those aggregates, we designate I, or the person, and what the thing designated is merely an appearance. There's no sort of existence from the side of the basis of designation, which is the I, we end up labeling using a word and a concept. We use the word I. We have this idea of a person that we are applying to that, but there is no sort of existence from the side of the thing designated. This is something which is a mere appearance. So although the I, the person, is something which is merely designated on that basis and is merely an appearance, that doesn't mean that it's not functional. That mere appearance functions as a person, carries out actions, and so forth. So there isn't sort of contradiction. It's not that it's non-existent, but rather there isn't something from the side of the basis of designation which makes it a person. It's through this process of giving a name, giving a label, that you have this thing, the I. So we come out then with something labeled, and it's nothing more than that.
Oh yeah, the Jonga is also that Kedu Rinpoche Songjela, Nyamsha Gisingo, Hama Meba, Kikang, Nyamsha Gisingo, and Rashi Meba, Dana Pepeka, Hama Rashi to a Kena, Katizaba, and it is Jesu, you are the Kardu, you can't do Yana, Matam, Ashewak, Mintam Shiliwatang, Mintam Shilose. 考上，这就是这个多半讲，明天，现在明天多半西站里面吧，西面都在，多半西面都在到达民政程度，到达民政程度下吧，我上个结巴那是，俺那提前了结巴咱俩马修吧，提前了就是修白民政嘛这个，俺那七八波的，来说不波的，俺那这个俺们波的说话给，俺那我他妈给我中国人以前的送过来。 그를 뭐 제가로.
그를 뭐 디 거기 식재디 양게.
냠샤기 생활 하면 밖에 냠샤기 저 가자 라시 주와 카게체. 是吧？俺那养下来浪完了，大家搞必须得开始留到身上，俺写我个名怎么去留吧的？现在明天多半西站人吧，多半西面都在边，到达名怎么都是三百了，你我上个几年，那些几年，第一的了，俺那家把家呢也没修吧，也没修吧，修呗，现在为俺那那咱们这个，俺那来说吧不的，都你们不当。 我猜他给俺那吃吧，你们才没叫我兄弟是的，我等下要不这么说。
So there is a quotation by Kedru Rinpoche where he says that to the perspective of someone in meditative equipoise, there is sort of no one has refuted any sort of inherent existence, such that that has been the object of negation has been totally refuted or negated. But when one arises out of that meditative equipoise, that single-pointed meditative equipoise on emptiness, when you arise out and recognize that the person exists as a mere appearance, so due to the logic of having refuted the kind of intrinsic or inherent existence of the person, one then arises out of that meditative equipoise and recognizes that the person is a mere appearance, and that this brings about certainty that the person is able to be an agent, act, accumulate karma, experience karma, and so forth as that mere appearance. And so one, the sort of understanding that this person merely designated on the basis of the aggregates is something that is a mere appearance doesn't negate their being able to accumulate karma and experience the results of karma and so forth, but rather one sees that this is the nature of the way that things actually are, and so this will come up farther along in the text.
Oh yeah, I did the Tajun on the Shiva de Kambasi, Tajun has sheets of their turn to Kambatabula China, Kambasaba, so you grab a letter, Lebata, some such to say, and tell some so Mima, Tavian Arodo, on the Kambatet and Digi. 아니 뭐 봐줘봐 민다도 잠바 아니 다들 대소하나 신세 민다병아로서 마다병아로도 담보네 아니 심중다 롱간라서와 레레 마주 가봐 거라도 조사를 돼 라 심중 마주 아니 롱간 마주 다 민다도 잠바 아니 가면 답보 되게 민다도 잠바 아니 네 심중 아니 네 야강 민다디가 아니 야간다 아니 캄바테단테 아니 민게 다점도 좋아 다디 마송도와 소스마주장 캄비 다보디 심주인 디롱강이 시와다고 민게 파다바 다바나 아니 시대나 민게 다바점도 아니 캄바테단테 주바래 대단테 냠부 주바래
So, like the example that came earlier, it's in a little more detail here. It says we can illustrate this with a building. So say someone has put up 3 new rooms, maybe. And they're building a house, and they've got all of these different rooms, and each has a different attractive design. And so prior to the owner, the builder of that building saying, oh, this is the sleeping quarters, this is the kitchen, this is the sitting room, the basis of designation, this building, these rooms, have been established, but they aren't existent as the sleeping quarters or the kitchen or whatever, because they haven't been designated as such. So they cannot be the sleeping quarters or anything else from the very beginning, even once that basis of designation is established, before they are given their separate names. But then the owner comes and puts a different name on each room, saying this one will serve as the sleeping quarters and this one will be the kitchen facility and so on. Only after that do we think to ourselves, oh, this is the bedroom, this is the kitchen, and so forth. You can have this basis, which is going to get the name, this house with all of these various rooms, but until the one to give them a name actually does so, they're not those things. They are not from their own side, the sleeping quarters or the kitchen or whatever, but rather they have to be given those names. They have to be designated to have the existence as, for example, a kitchen or sleeping quarters.
Oh yeah, that就是다시 캄바숨 초장 도저히 파란 마다는 미주베 캄바태양 안에 민다 또바다바자메 와 대나 캄바자 마인바 치오칸당 강이나야 아니 다시라 강라야 다시라 미제바 다제라 치오칸당 강 캄바자 마인바 치오칸당 강양 다시라 미제바大就对了，去过些，去看到看一次，别那看啥到我的，大西碰不了没些吧。完呢，碰不得了，站着大约大去看啥的，他大去看啥的，搞有啊这大西碰不定的远呐，俺家让人家出把这个话的，大西碰不定没啥的，是吧？大西碰不定的远呐，看啥这大的怎么？俺那看啥早完呐，看的也早呐，俺那大西碰不定的远呐，俺那让人家出把的，是吧？人家。让人出发的中国人咱大些分配定的咱呢，慢点讲，俺那看啥没着吧？但是让现在有的慢点把的去把名字，但是让现在有的慢点把的发现是看啥些大些分配定的咱呢，慢点把的看啥去把马的是。看啥去嘛？慢点大家国民把阶级民众他们的是慢点把的，俺那。가자 고바 말이 무슨 말이지? 가래 가사 고람 가시데 고바 말이지. 워낙 가래에서나 가서래 다시디 띵도 아니 많이 봐인자 다시디 띵도 라신 수와다 가발. 좋아? 다음에 가사 간대지 와래서 다시디 띵도 명점지기 차와 지니 자고 와래. 좋아? 명점지.
So, again, this is something where there isn't some sort of existence from the side of the object. Thus, a building, too, is nothing more than something labeled with a name and a concept. So it's without this process of designating or naming things, you can't say it exists as that thing. And we are talking about more than just some building. The point is that any existent entity is just the same. We must take it to be a product of the labeling process and not the basis which receives our label. So if, for example, on the basis of designation of the aggregates, you label the person on that basis, the person is not the basis of designation. It's not identical with that basis of designation. And if this I or this person so designated upon the aggregates were able to be found among the aggregates, if there was something that you could point to and say, well, this is the I within that basis of designation, then that thing would have to be truly established. It would have to be established by means of its own intrinsic characteristics. But that's not the case. You can search within that basis of designation and you don't find the thing so designated. But that does not lead to the non-existence of the designated thing. You have not refuted the existence of that designated object, but rather you refuted inherent existence, intrinsic somehow from its own side, this non-contingent, non-dependent kind of existence. So there is a verse that says that the non-finding of a thing within its basis of designation is not does not lead to the lack of existence of the thing so designated. You haven't refuted so in the example of the person, which has been designated on the basis of the aggregates, that designated person does exist. What you have refuted in not being able to find that person within the basis of designation is its existence as an intrinsically established, inherently established thing. So one has to be clear that when you are negating or refuting the object of negation, you're not refuting or negating the designated thing. So although you might refute, you might say that you can't find the I or the person within that basis of designation, you are not refuting or negating that designated person, but rather its intrinsic existence.
Oh yeah. 다시 차고 대신도 탄야병아데 탄야병아사 당가란도 아사 탄야도 연결경아데 또배 파다 좀 인장 또배 파다 좀 인장 가란도라 차디 아니 또배 파상 그 나와 마셔봐 아니 나코랑 아니 라완도 주봐봐 추두도 주와 차야 되라 대신도 탄야병아데 또배 파다 좀 인장 안 줘라 파다 좀 민바 코랑 그거네 추루 아니 가소래 가두소서 가와다 안 두바라 데두 카데스 참지 중앙다야 참제 가소래 숙제 용게 리리지 샤용 세대 가야자 라문에 주바 이다 라문에 주바데 샤와데 시고래 라문에 주바라 마란도라 샤주데라 라문에 주바 마샤와지 아니 나 타냐병 나코랑 집어셔야지 자원은 말이是吧？刚才咱满这吧，俺你让的出啊马下吧，俺你俺看说的，俺几不谈也别，俺几不讲那么小话计划在早晚那里是吧？讲这个说话哪些钱呢？我一旦搞一点，我让的他妈完了，那就他个人，现在他个人的搞过来的，是吧？我刚才跟那话一张。你知道，两个领不起小红赛的，讲个送了，那我领的人说想的，搞就人家就错那的赛的，我让了，那我。但你卡萨那就得阿旺的零钱呀，或者嘎起那咱就那就几类事，天马嘎把钱，天来先把去嘎家，先把去错呀嘎呀的，咱这个嘛是送我的，嘎就人家就说完那的事。我的印象，马上在那就刚刚嘎起那就蛮多，完了谈也病啊，说那个嘎起那就咱满这吧，就那么咱的没吧，
So this equally applies to the conventional me or the conventional I. It only exists insofar as I label it with some concept. So when this I, which we have designated on the basis of the aggregates, appears to us, it appears as if it has some kind of existence out there on its own, not as though it were something that were merely labeled through the imputation or designation of our mind. So it appears as though it were established from its own side. So you and I tend to think of me as something more than just a creation of names. So when our person, our self, the I, appears to us, we have this vivid mental image of him or her out there on his or her own, the intimate experiencer of all that he or she feels, pleasure or pain or whatever. So for us, the way that the I appears is as though it had this kind of existence from its own side, as though it were not dependent upon anything else, and certainly not as though it were just a mere designation. So for us, the way that this, for ordinary beings, the way that the I appears has this kind of sense of existing from its own side without having to depend upon anything else. And so we have to recognize that although this can appear to us sort of mixed with the conventionally existent I, as long as we're still ordinary beings, the I appears in this way as though it had its own sort of existence from its own side. And so in order to properly refute that or negate that, we need to identify the way that it is appearing to us and actually refute that. If we are to go and try to refute something else, like some philosophical concept of an I, that's not going to help us at all. We have to get at the way that this I appears to us as though it had this autonomous, non-contingent kind of existence, and refute that, which is actually the thing that we need to refute, not some other sort of concept that we have created.
Oh yeah, that tetadu, ngaranzu nanzu tetadu, nga nanzu, ngara wandu chuboga tsudu du chuba nawa lilin shawa nashi, ane tsudu du chuba zimbi zing lote la, te zingan ki lote, da lenji yese toma meba na yongye. 아니 균전 춤다기 레바당 아니 균전 지안다지 균전 따나지 삼니 아니 나라시 주바 좀 마임바 토마 메바냐 아니 주세 강암 슈슈기 증바 인장 춤대 길레바라 마되바 인자 텐더비 로 증간지 로데 아니 알아서 나지 로란 가서 레링 나와도 추와 증간기 로데 아니 덴진 한게 아니 알아서지 추와 집에 진짜 인자 직단 한게스 그러와 덴진 한게다 직단 한게 가가래 어디 내가 덴진 한게다 직단 한게 이가체 직단 한게 생각들라 알아서지 추와 집에 아니 암 수시 지점이 증발 한게 증발들었고 그래 덴진 한게 제가 치다나 그 탐자라 덴진 군다다 덴진 한게 이 덴진 군다 한게 이 요소 그래
So this way of that we grasp at these objects as they appear to us, so we have this appearance of the I or the person as though it were existent from its own side without having to rely or depend upon anything else. And the state of mind that grasps at this I is what we call the innate grasping at a self, or the innate view of the perishable collection. So this is not something that we have developed through our study of philosophical tenets or something like that, but rather this type of grasping at that I as it appears to us is something that we have had since beginningless time. It's innate, or inborn, as he says here. You usually see innate. And so this, so vivid, self-standing me, this state of mind clings to is the self that we must come to see does not exist. So this is what we need to identify, this way that we grasp at an I or a self as if it had some sort of innate existence, or it had some sort of intrinsic existence. And this mode, this way of grasping, is something that is innate to us. We have had this since beginningless time. Now here where it says the innate destructible view, which I'm going to translate as view of the perishable collection, that is only in the basis, on the basis of our own self, the I, what we grasp at as I, our own person. Now the innate grasping at true existence, which we all have as well, applies equally to all phenomena, whether it is our self, the self of other persons, or all whatever sort of phenomena it may be. So the grasping at a perishable collection, the view of the perishable collection, is only in relation to our own self, but the grasping at true existence applies to all phenomena that we see. So we'll stop there for today.
Dagi chak dang mo sung ye wei yu dran yan bar sung lu dang lo je je pang pa me bar bo gi le she ne tuk som rang sa dro war chen ki lo pi dam guratna dalakani atayami